Thanks for tuning in to the Trap House Podcast. Now a quick word about our sponsors. We have Duke Traps. Check out DukeTraps.com. Duke manufactures over 40 different models of K-traps, coil spring traps, long spring traps, and body grip style traps. Also, my personal favorite, they have the Duke Dog Proofs. They come powder coated, perfect on the line. Check out DukeTraps.com and you won't be disappointed. We have J3 Outdoors, maker of the Hags Bracket, all American made products. Check out their website, j3o.com, and you will not be disappointed. They have everything from your bait holders, your spring clips, your tail hooks, the universal locks, the list goes on. Especially if you're a water trapper, you want to check this website out. That's j3o.com. We also have Top Lot Stretcher Company with us. Check out their website at toplotstretcherco.com. Top Lot Stretcher Company handles all your wooden stretcher needs, along with pelt handling supplies and trapping supplies. Check out their website at toplotstretcherco.com. And representing all the girls in the trapping world, we have Trapping Girl Inc. with us. Check out their website, trappinggirlinc.com. They have awesome apparel for the females. There's also kids apparel, lures and baits, things you could use out in the field. Check out their website, trappinggirlinc.com. And there's only one true way to start out the trap line in the morning, and that's with a nice hot cup of coffee from traplinecoffee.com. Check out their numerous collections. They have Trapline Blend, a Kodiak Blend, and my favorite, a Cherry Red Blend, all available at traplinecoffee.com. Also, be sure to check out Weeby Knives. That's weebyknives.com. They have skinning knives, fleshing knives, all your fur handling tools. Check out weebyknives.com. Need a place to sell your fur? Check out Groenewald Fur and Wool Company. They're the largest and most experienced direct receiver of wild fur with over 50 plus years of experience. Their website is gfwco.com. And last but not least, Hoosier Trapper Supply. Check out our website, HoosierTrapperSupply.com, home of the Top Dog Predator Bait and Jet Fuel Predator Lure. We got all your trapping needs, trapping scents and baits, deer scent, and apparel. Check out HoosierTrapperSupply.com. Alright, welcome back to the Trap House Podcast. Just me and Charlie today.
Yep, we're going to talk about fur, since it's appropriate time of year to talk about fur and your catch, what to do with your catch, etc., etc.
So. Yeah, a lot of people in the fur shed getting things, getting their fur ready to either sell or have tanned or whatever they're going to do. We'll go through all those steps. We should probably mention first thing, right out the gate, if you're watching this the day it comes out, which is this Friday, or it is Friday.
March 1st, yeah.
Yeah, if you're watching this on March 1st, tomorrow there is a fur sale in Columbus,
Indiana.
At the fairgrounds, Bartholomew. I don't have the address, but all the link will be in the description below. And if you want to attend at first thing in the morning, basically show up, sign in about 8:30. Auction starts rolling about 9:30, and it varies on how many buyers we have. We usually have 5 to 8, just depends on the year, but it's always a good time regardless. So more than welcome to come out. If you're a member, obviously you get a little bit better of a price break there as far as
commission, right?
Commission, yeah. So keep that in mind. Then also on Sunday is here at Hoosier Trapper Supply, Groenewald Fur and Wool Company is pulling in with their truck and buying right here in the lot. So
right,
and that's from 10 to 11:30 on Sunday.
Right. So for those of you that are out of state, because I know we have a lot more listeners out of state than we do within the state of Indiana, check your state associations. A number of them already have had their sales, but there will be some yet to hold them for sales yet this season. And then also check Groenewald's website for when he'll be in your area to buy fur. And then also Fur Harvesters Auction Company will have on their website will have where they're going to pick up fur. They don't buy on the spot. That goes to the auction. But if you want to meet the truck and get your fur on the auction, you can do that. So, and they will be here sometime in April. So you have to check the website. But
yeah, and all those links are below. So
yeah,
I'll have them up.
So there are definitely options in selling fur.
So what's the first thing, Charlie?
So I mean, a lot of this would probably be better to watch a video or whatever. So we're gonna just kind of go through some basic fur handling ideas, some important things. Well, so first off, so you got to catch your animal.
Right.
What are you gonna do? So if it's super muddy, super dirty, whatever, best thing to do is wash it immediately while it's still on the carcass. And you can wash it in the creek, or you can wash it with a hose, or you've got a utility sink at home. Get that thing washed out. Blow it off the best you can with an air compressor or whatever. If you don't have that, just do the best you can. We normally put our stuff up on milk crates, so it's off the ground, and to get fans around it, and that blow it out that way. Put it in a cool room to do that. The big thing is it's better to get it dry while it's on the carcass than it is if you skin it. So I know there's guys that wash skins after the fact, after they're skinned, but this I think it actually dries a little bit better, and you don't have to worry about slipping quite as bad. So so get that thing.
I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate and ask random questions that you could follow up. Now, when you're talking about rinsing and washing fur, are you talking about actually using soap?
You could. I mean, that's more applies to like if you want to get into high-end coyotes and bobcats and stuff. Right now, with what that stuff's worth, it's just not worth spending the time with doing that. So, but you want to be practical about it. You don't want to take the fur buyer something muddy or matted down or full of burrs or all of that. You're still marketing a product. So you want it to look as good as you can, but it's got to be within the realm of reality of how much time you want to spend on a $10 raccoon. So, I mean, that's kind of all relative. And some people love doing that, and that's fine. Obviously makes a beautiful product. So,
yeah. Even if the guys that we've rinsed things up, dipping in the creeks where you catch it at the site, and did the whole milk crate thing. Obviously, you're not going to get all of it out, which is fine to a degree because I've noticed when it is dry and you go to comb it, all that dry dirt that had been in there will flake out of there a lot easier, and then you can almost shake it out. Obviously, when it's wet, it clings on to the hide and fur. So
same thing applies to blood. If as long as it's not like saturated in blood, if it's just kind of some spotty blood, when that dries, it'll comb out, and it you can get it out of there. So, but if you've got blood-soaked areas, then it's definitely a good idea to wash that and get it cleaned up. So the whole bottom line is get that thing looking as good as you can for just a practical amount of time spent. So comb it out. Get the burrs and stuff out of it. If you are, at this point, if you are freezing it to sell it frozen, and for instance, Groenewald prefers stuff just actually being frozen flat so that they can tell the size and they can tell, what it looks like. In the case of beavers, you can lay them flat and just fold them in half and freeze them that way, so they can tell size or whatever. You can go
first side out,
right? First side out. If you can go another fold on beavers, but I think if you got room, I would just fold them one time and just lay them out like that, and then freeze them. Now, when you stack these in your freezer, and I don't one layer at a time. So in other words, it goes in. You got one layer down. You got to let those freeze before you add more. So if you stack 2-3 layers deep, it won't. Even though it's in the freezer, it's not going to freeze quick enough, and it will actually spoil in your freezer. So very important, so that it freezes quickly. So
yeah, very important.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're dealing with large hides like coyotes and such, not everyone's got the biggest freezer in the world. We did share a video from our Kansas trip with Mike Huber. He does a fascinating job with how he compacts and gets the most amount you can possibly fit in a freezer. It's a great method. It's real simple. Lays it in flat, puts a board on it, and then puts something heavy like a rock, and that will slowly compress it as it freezes down. And like Charlie said, you do it in layers.
One layer at a time.
Yep. So then just start adding. Then basically you got a brick of fur in that whole freezer.
Right. Yeah, he can get as much in there as possible. It's basically like shrink wrapping something is what he's doing without the shrink wrap machine. Yep. And he was literally actually using tractor weights. So he had that board that fit the freezer and put tractor weights in on top of that, which are heavy. So that was really weighting that down, and that works great for him, and he's been doing it for years, so he's got a good system. So
yeah. I can't recall the actual episode, but it was when we were in Kansas a couple years ago. If you sift back through the episodes, you should be able to find it. And
Right.
It might be in the how-to section too on its own.
It may be, yeah.
So if
So
it's not, it should be.
yeah, yeah. So we got your fur for those of you that are going to sell it frozen or keep it frozen. That's where we're at. Okay. Ideally, don't roll it up in a ball and put it in a bag and try to sell it like that because they just can't tell enough about it. So
Yeah, they'll give you the bare minimum that way
Right.
because they don't know what they're buying.
right, if they'll even buy it.
Right, that's true.
So, okay, so for those of you that want to go ahead and put it up, which would mean scrape it, stretch it, dry it. To back up, on the frozen fur, don't scrape it. Just leave the fat on because a couple things. One, it's not necessary to do that. Number two, it helps prevent freezer burn. So that fat actually helps freezer burn. So just quick reference, if you are going to keep frozen fur for a year, in other words, to next season, without selling it, you will need to wrap it up, couple layers of plastic bag or whatever, wrap it up, push the air out, and then stick it back in the freezer. So try not to keep an eye on your freezer. A lot of times freezers, the ones that are self-defrosting, are more likely to dry stuff out. So, just
Yeah,
kind of use your judgment, but just make sure you get it wrapped up really well. So what we're talking about freezing and with being able to sell the skin within 2 or 3 months. That's with the skin exposed in the freezer.
yeah,
So okay.
good point.
So if you want to go ahead and finish your stuff out, basically you'll need a fleshing beam, you'll need a fleshing knife, ideally you'll need an apron, and you'll need stretchers. And so the fleshing tools, if you're doing anything other than muskrats, the two-handle fleshing tools with 2 edges. So it's important to have the upper edge be sharp and the bottom edge be your scraping edge, the edge that you can actually use about 80% of the time. But when you need that top sharp edge, you'll need that like on the backs of the neck of a raccoon. You'll need it on going down the back of a beaver, places like that where you're actually going to be shaving more than you will be pushing it off. So
Yeah.
it's important to have a knife with 2 edges. So you can buy Weeby Pro, kind of an entry level knife, 2 edges. You can buy a Weeby Elite knife, very nice knife, or you can get like a Necker, another very nice knife. So all of those would fit the bill
Yeah.
for what you need.
I will say that if beginners are interested in, most guys listening that do this probably already have what they like in their shed. But for beginners, I've used every knife that we've sold and then some that's been given to us. And it really boils down probably a little bit to what you get used to in technique.
It does.
They're all pretty good knives, so it's kind of personal preference. And you'll get a feel for how you work it. Usually one person will fall in love with one knife, and it's hard for them to get away from it half the time because that's what they got used to.
Right.
So
So
I wouldn't overthink too much when you're going to select.
just buy what you
2
best,
edge.
buy the best you can afford. I think that's
Yeah.
probably the best way to say it. So. So for doing muskrats, you will need. There are some people that use the 2-handled knives, just a single edge, to do muskrats on. That's fine if you're set up for that. I think generally a muskrat beam which are specific. By the way, the other beam will fit everything else. So you'll need a muskrat beam. The skin actually goes over the beam, and you're going to use just the little 1-handle fleshers, and that'll work good. Because on a muskrat, there's not much to take off. There's some fat in the saddle or shoulder area, and then down along the bottom. That's what needs to come off. The red membrane stays on, so they don't need a whole lot of attention. So
Yeah.
that's the main thing. Here again, those skins, that fur needs to be dry before you put it on the stretcher. So, and that doesn't make any difference whether you're using wire or wood. It needs to be dry. So,
Wire or wood,
yeah,
you want it to be. Age-old debate. It sounds like from even before my times.
yeah.
Like, which way do you go, wire or wood? Well, it really depends on what you're doing, and some preference, obviously, too.
Right. So there's not a definitive answer to that. I will say that there's not a fur buyer of any size that's using wood to speak of. They might be using it on their Bobcats, but in general, it's just not. They can't justify the time putting stuff on wood. So that, with that said, I mean that's commercial fur production, and they're using wire. In all the years I bought fur, I cannot imagine taking the time to tack stuff out on wood. The only thing that was for us that was a consistent was mink. We always put mink on wood, even back in the day when we were super busy with other stuff. A lot of times we would freeze mink, and we'd actually put them up later in the season when we weren't having to deal with really big numbers of carcass muskrats and raccoons. Because, I mean, in the scheme of things, you don't buy that many mink. You know, you might buy 10,000 muskrats, and you still might only buy 200 or 300 mink. So, just to put that in context. So, the mink are the only thing that I think should be put on wood. There are wire stretchers available. They just don't look very good on wire. They bow out. I don't think you're getting the size. They just don't look that great on wire. Wire's okay, and here again, mink prices are really bad. Wild mink prices are really bad. So does it even make that much difference? So yeah. So
now, could the wire? Could you? I've never done this, so I'm asking. But we've always, even here, just tanning for a customer, we've always used wood. With the wire, do you think it could be manipulated, bent in enough to where it would take care of some of that bow?
Maybe. I mean, that stretcher's so long and skinny. It's hard to get that. It's hard to get that shape right if you mess with them. So on a coon stretcher that's wider, that you've got some width to deal with, you can get the shape much nicer than you can on a wire mink stretcher. So, anyways,
yeah.
One thing about wire. Make sure there's no rust on them. So if you got rust on your stretchers, steel wool them, oil them up. You can use coon fat even on them, but get that rust off. That rust will permanently stain a tan fur. So we've talked about this before. Literally, if you get, for instance, if you get a coyote tanned that was on a rusty stretcher, you will see the rust marks on the sides of that skin from that stretcher. So it's a permanent stain. So pretty definitely something you want to avoid. Now, going back to the wire wood debate, assuming, say, prices for raccoons were much better. Personally, if I had the time, I would take my very best raccoons and put it on wood, just because you can get a nicer look in terms of the bottoms of them, and you can maybe gain, if you're within a 1/4 inch of a 2XL, on wire, you can definitely probably get that 2XL on wood. So with tacking it down, it's not going to dry out of that size. So those are the times that I would probably consider using wood. Bobcats, here again, a higher priced item. If you want to use wood, you don't have to worry about the edge. On wire, maybe that's one to put on wood. The muskrats, and I've had people swear it's like, oh, put them on wood. I would tell you, most buyers do not like muskrats on wood because you can't stack them because they're thick. Yeah. So they look really nice on wire. They dry nice on wire, and they can stack them, and they'll stack them 10, 10, 10, 10, and then you stack them in 10, 5 tall, and that's 100. So you can put 100 muskrats in a stack and get it in nice and condensed, and you have to worry about it falling over. If you use wood stretchers, it's not that easy. So they look great on wire, and I would recommend wire for muskrats as well. So
yeah, be a good time to mention too. Don't forget to flip your hide on things that are drying out, depending on what you're working with, obviously. So your predators, your coyotes, your fox. There's been times where...
And bobcats,
you get, time goes by the wayside and you kind of forget. And the next thing you know, your hide's too stiff to even turn. And you force it and then end up ripping your hide. And it was, a waste to begin with. So,
right.
There are ways around that. You can rehydrate. We've wrapped damp towels on there just enough to get enough moisture back into the hide so you can flip it. Sometimes you can go that route. fans are your friend as far as drying that stuff back out.
Once it's flipped, be careful with
Yes.
that fan on the skin before it's turned first side out.
Right.
So I guess to clarify, everything is sold skin out if it's stretched and dried, except for coyotes, foxes, bobcats, wolves, which, we don't have to deal with that, but wolves, wolverines, some of that specialized stuff. But for most of us, foxes, coyotes, bobcats have to be fur out. Everything else is skin out. And what Justin's referring to is when you start that skin out, and you let it get dry to the touch, but it's still got to be very essential, so it's pliable enough that you can turn it first side out.
Right.
Now, Top Lot Stretcher has a drying system so that you can start a coyote, bobcat, or fox on a stretcher first side out, and he actually has a hose going down the stretcher that gives it air, and you can dry those skins, and you don't have to worry about turning them. That is an awesome system. So they've used that within the ranch mink and the ranch fox industry for years, but now he's got it available to trappers. So
Yeah.
it's it's a little more money, but man, it's nice.
Yeah. There is once again, if you go to our YouTube page, Who's Your Trapper Outdoors, there is a video of Leon from Top Lot Stretcher kind of demoing that setup and showing you at a convention. So you can check it out on YouTube. Shout out to our sponsors.
Yep.
We also like their adjustable wood stretchers for the higher items. High dollar bobcat, you get out west or something. It's good that have that mix. You can adjust to that size of that cat and get the best out of it. So
Yeah.
we should probably back up just a little bit because we kind of skipped one here, Charlie. We were talking about tools and fur handling equipment, beam setups, actual fleshing beam setup.
Okay.
There's a lot of different. Well, yeah, you're looking.
There's one behind us.
It's hard to see it, but
And if you're looking on our YouTube page under the Fur Shed series, there is I actually make a beam out of an ash log, which is actually what we use in our room here. It's basically you've got the stand. I just took the log, split it in half, and then cleaned the bark off of it. And it was pretty smooth as it was. Smoothed it out, and I'm just using a half log. So simple. One thing you can do on the beams that are available from like us and other trapping supply places is you can take a barn door hinge, put it at the bottom of the beam, and attach the other part of it to the wall, about 12 to 18 inches off the floor, and then that beam, when you're not using it, you can just have like a loop or whatever, so you can attach it to the wall. When you want to use it, then have it drop down on something fairly substantial, like a good quality sturdy sawhorse or some sort of table that will hold that beam in place and take that pressure of you pushing down with your fleshing knife. So that works great, and then that beam lifts up and you can clean underneath it real easily. The big thing about beams is when those drop down and you're using them to flesh on, they got to be stable. You don't want them moving and rocking. I saw somebody having one hanging by a chain on YouTube. It
looks like a cedar totter.
It's just not functional. So it's important that when that beam is there, it needs to be, that's why it's up against the wall.
Keep it solid.
It needs to be very stable and solid and not move.
Yeah.
So
that's how you end up with holes.
Exactly. And you can't, if it's moving, you can't get the correct pressure against what you're pushing off. So.
Yeah. So what do you think about like PVC pipe type beams and stuff? I've never worked off one.
I haven't either. I guess my initial reaction is always that it's what you get used to and what you like to do. It seems like it will get a little slick, but it will also be very easy to clean. So I know Stu's Coon Creek is really big on PVC beams. In fact, he made a few that we sold for him. So yeah, nothing wrong with that. If you can get some of the PVC in that thickness is pretty expensive. So I don't know my PVC sizes, but it's the better, some of the better quality PVC, isn't it? So,
fairly thick stuff.
Yeah. So if you got access to some scrap or whatever, that's the way to get it. But if you got to go buy it, it's going to be a little more money, and you can leave it as a tube, or as a tube, or you can cut it. So
Yep.
either way,
Yeah, and then you could sand your edges, get it
yeah,
so it's not
die grinded or whatever. So yeah,
bit too much pressure on a fairly sharp edge. You're gonna pop a hole, obviously.
one thing we kind of already talked about. We have it on our list here about where to sell fur. We've already kind of talked about that at the beginning of the podcast. So I think we kind of got that covered. Was there anything else up here, Justin? You think we should?
As far as the stretcher issue, or not issue, but preference, ultimately it's probably figure out where you want to go with your fur to begin with, and then ask them what they want.
Yeah, good
That
suggestion.
because if you got a local buyer and he's like, hey, I want everything on wood for whatever reason, if that's what he wants, maybe try and accommodate that and maybe give you a better price for it. So it just kind of depends what you're doing. Like if you sell a grown wall, doesn't matter, right?
What's that? Between wood and wire?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Just it's more about speed. You don't have to stretch it for length on a coon. Meat sizes.
The length is still important. The size is still important. So, but he doesn't. He's not looking. He doesn't care if it's on wire or wood.
Okay.
So he's still great in size.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha. Yeah. So ask your buyer and go from there is what I would do.
yeah. Oh, and one more skin that definitely should go on wood is our otters. I mean, I've seen guys put them on wire, and the tail gets all funky looking. If you did put them on wire, you're gonna have to put another piece of wood so you can get the tail tacked out. So the best thing to do is get some wooden otter stretchers.
They come in multiple sizes too.
Yeah, there's usually small, medium, and large. If you're only buying one size, just get the medium size. But otter are like mink; they just need to be on wood. So
Yeah. That length.
yeah,
That narrowness of them, it just
and with
makes
that
sense.
tail, yeah.
Yep. So on here we also have where to sell, which we've been talking about. We could put now. Indiana used to have a link that had all the fur buyers in the state.
Yeah, you can still type it in on Indiana. Just go to the Department of Natural Resources list of Indiana fur buyers, licensed Indiana fur buyers. It'll come up.
Okay. I'll
Usually-
try and find that link and put that in the description as well, so people can find it easier.
But you can go to your state DNR or Fish and Game, whatever you call it in your state, and they probably do the same as far as licensed fur buyers. Back years ago, there was a fur buyer in every county. Some counties had more than one. It is not like that anymore. It's going to require some traveling. So unfortunately, we have lost that tradition of just the local fur buyer. But so that's certainly an option if you're fortunate enough to have one nearby, that you can just take your fur over and sell him the whole animal, the whole raccoon. So
yeah.
Of course, we talked about traveling buyers like growing wool, running routes. There are some other buyers, not as much here in the east, but there are a few that still run routes. In the western states, I think there might be a couple more. Than the fur auctions, Trapper Association fur auctions. Good way to sell fur. All depends on who shows up to buy. So check your state and local Trappers Associations to see if there's any upcoming sales yet this spring. And then, of course, Fur Harvesters Auction. So if you want to sell fur, there are places to sell it. Unfortunately, the price in a lot of cases is not good.
Yeah.
Beaver being right this year, winter of 2024, beaver are the animal. They're the ones most in demand. So,
Which is cool when you think about it.
Yeah.
I've always talked about how cool the beaver is and the history behind it. I always love to think of, like, obviously in modern day, this is as close as we're going to be to being a mountain man.
Yeah.
But to know, like, back in the day, guys would explore out west strictly to find beaver.
right.
And it's just
Right.
amazing.
So it's kind of like there's been points over the years where beavers were worth good money, but right now they're the best. So it's kind of come full circle, I guess, in a way. So yeah, it's kind of cool. So
Okay, so let's say something like this happens. Go out, you had a great season, caught a handful of different items. You pit it all up. Something happens, you miss the deadline of these sales or where you can get to an auction. How should people hold on to that fur till next season?
Okay, if it's stretched and dried, or just stick it in the freezer.
Just straight
Yeah,
up?
just put it in a bag. It's not near as critical as far as having stuff that's not put up, stuff that's green, just skinned. That's going to need more attention as far as freezer burn. But your stretched and dried skins can just go directly into the freezer. That way you don't have to worry about bugs, or it slows oxidation down significantly. So that's your best bet. Just put it in the freezer.
Now, what about the items that are like coons, muskrats, where the hide is out?
That's fine.
You'd still want to wrap that before you put it in the freezer.
You could just put it in.
You're
there
not
like
worried
that.
about stuff drying out.
Not so much.
Well, it's already dried.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's freeze dried.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
In a way.
Well, yeah, that's kind of different. But yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
just put it in the freezer. That's the main thing, because bugs will get into it. No matter how you think you're bug free or whatever, bugs will find their way to get into it, and it oxidizes, so it's going to get lighter. The skin's going to get more yellow in color, which is very noticeable on otter and mink. As just even within the season, sometimes they will turn more yellow or on those two skins particularly. So one thing we didn't mention was beaver. That's the only thing that's not really stretched in a case skin. Those are stretched round, or oval. So
Right.
that's important. But nowadays, so many you do get more on stretched and dried, but the green price is pretty good. So a lot of people are just selling their beavers just skinned. So
Yeah, just like you said, skin them out, fold them in half, get them to your buyer.
right,
That's probably, like I said, check with whoever you're dealing with.
right.
Well, what if something happens and your freezer you don't have a freezer and you risk it? Some guy has, 10 coyotes hanging in the rafter in his garage, and a little bit of bugs start to get in there. What should he do to try and save that?
You're gonna have to spray it down with bug spray, like flying insect spray. That's probably your best bet. So
Spray it down, maybe get it in a trash bag, kind of fumigate it,
yeah,
gas it out.
spray it before the bugs get there, and then
Right.
periodically spray it. You can
Yeah.
use those room fogger things too. This is way less than ideal, and at this point, considering what fur's worth, I'm not sure it's worth fighting it to do that. But
Right. Well, sometimes it's hard to let go of your precious catches.
that's right. That's right. I mean, there is something to be said for seeing all that fur hanging there, and then all of a sudden the room's empty, and it's like, oh, that's kind of a letdown.
Yes. What else we need, Charlie?
So a lot of people have stuff tanned.
Right.
So you can drag it into a place like ours, taxidermy shop. That a lot of guys bring them in here whole. That it's not skinned, and they just want one coyote tanned or whatever. And most taxidermists will accommodate you on that. But a lot of guys will they want their stuff tanned, and they send it directly to a tannery. So you can do what we just talked about as far as skinning, scraping, stretching, and drying, and send that to the tannery. It's got to be that way to send it to them. They're not going to accept a carcass animal. There are a few tanneries that will accept green stuff that's just skinned. You'll have to check that in advance. Obviously, they're going to charge you a higher fee on that, but make sure that you've got delivery capabilities in place. You don't want it spoiling in transit. Maybe you got one close enough where you can just deliver it directly to them. So that's another option. But one thing, we do quite a bit of this. So, for instance, if somebody brings us a beaver in and they want it tanned, we skin it, we scrape it, and we actually just lay it flat and salt it. We don't stretch it. It saves some time, but more than anything, when that tanned skin comes back, there's not nail holes all the way around the skin. So,
Right.
And you just, like I said, just lay it flat, put white. We use livestock salt from Farm Store. Tractor Supply Company sells it. Most farm stores have it. Comes in 40-pound bags. Just use that. It's cheap. And be very generous with the salt. So
Yeah. And if you have a saturated hide, which can happen sometimes with a beaver, big fatty beaver, just greased out, dump a heavy amount of salt in there, then you might have to come back the next day. If that salt is saturated with that, you can knock all that off and apply a fresh layer.
So what
that helps a lot, and it speeds up your time too. It will dry much faster than laying against the floor.
Right. So what the salt does is actually pulling moisture out of the skin. So don't put salt on top of skin that's not fleshed, because basically the fat will protect the skin from the salt, and it'll just spoil anyways. So don't do that. So the skin has to be properly fleshed before you salt it.
Right.
One thing we do too is we case skin everything that's going to be tanned. If somebody wants it opened up later, we can open it up later so it lays flat. But one thing we do on case skinned fur, when it goes on the stretcher, we always salt under the arms, around the head, down the tail.
Anywhere where skin will touch skin.
Right.
That bottom lip will lay back down and touch on the neck. Salt that really good around the ears.
Yeah.
Lip lines, nose.
Yeah. You'll just get a better quality skin back from the tannery if you do that. We have had over the years, we'll have skins brought in that are scraped and dried, and whoever brings them in, they do a really nice job. But a lot of times when those come back, the tail is not quite as good as it could be. Some parts of it may slip. It just doesn't do as well without that salt running down actually just down the tail. You got to pull the bone, open the tail up. Even if you put it on a wire stretcher, run salt down that tail. So
definitely open up the tail.
Yeah.
Because if you don't,
it will spoil.
And it's hanging. Obviously, you put salt on it, or even if you didn't, whatever method it is, all that moisture and all the stuff that it's pulling out of that hide just goes down the hide, right down in that hole of the tail, and starts slipping at the base.
Right. It will literally fill that tail up with what little fat renders out of the skin pores. So and moisture. So
yeah,
very important. So yeah, when you're sending stuff off to get tanned, consider that salting method, particularly on beavers. I would do it on everything, even if it's on a stretcher. If you want to sell skins, do not put salt on it.
No.
They may not even buy it, but it's considered a second at best. So it discolors the skin. They don't want it. So, but if you're having stuff tanned, it's okay to salt it. So.
Yeah, and same thing with the tail. Like we said, open that. Keep that in mind with if you keep the feet on hides, coyotes or whatever. I see that happen where they'll split up down the arm, then they'll have the toes where they make sure you get out all that bone, split the membrane, get all that junk out of there the best you can. And when you salt it, actually fold that paw out so all that moisture and junk and fat residue has somewhere to go. If it's a pocket, it just collects, and it's a bad spot for slippage and rot, basically.
Right. And tanning is one of those things that there are so many factors in it, and most of the time stuff comes out okay, but there's times that it doesn't. And it can be anything from the health of the animal, the condition the animal was in, certainly how long it sat around before it was taken care of, what the temperature was in the room that you're drying them in. Mm-hmm. I mean, so many factors play into the quality of tan that you get in the end. And I mean, I've been doing this since the 70s, and we've been doing taxidermy since 1995. So, I mean, we deal with this a lot, and there are times that it's frustrating, stuff that may or may not turn out the way we would like it to. But generally, I mean, generally it does. I mean, but there are times where there may be an issue with something. So
yeah, but I think the biggest thing is whatever it is you deal with or catch, to take care of it right away. Don't wait, beat around the bush with it, because then bad things can happen. If you don't have time to do that, get it dry and get it in the freezer and deal with it later when you have the time.
Right.
And that will save you so much headache.
Some guys, some guys kind of freak out if the belly on a coyote or a red fox are bad about doing it. Muskrats are kind of bad about doing it. Bobcats to a certain point, in the belly area with their skin will actually have a green residue on it. Sometimes that's there almost immediately. It's from the intestinal acids and whatever that may come through. Obviously, if that is on the skin and you're not seeing any slippage or whatever, you can rub salt on that, or you can use 20-miltene borax, and that will help slow that down. We've had a lot of skins over the years that have had that, and they come out of the tan just fine, no issues. But just be aware that can be an issue. So muskrats, if they start getting green on the belly, they that gets a little riskier for sure. So they're very thin membraned on the belly, and when it gets to the skin, there's not a lot of protection there for them. So some stuff lands, can lay on the floor for a while. It's got a floor life when it's on carcass. Beavers hold up well, but some stuff like muskrats don't, and the most predators don't do super well. I think it's just got a lot to do with their digestive system and what they're eating and what the bacteria that's there. So, so just be aware of that. So I think that kind of wraps it up.
Yeah.
So when you guys are watching this, obviously if you listen to it on a podcast platform, we don't have, there's not really a capability of questions there. But if you do happen to watch this on YouTube, and if you've got further questions about what we're talking about today, there's always a lot of questions about this. Put them in the comments section below, and when we do our next podcast, we'll at least take a few minutes and try to answer those. So.
Yeah. For people chiming in or listening in that haven't really handled or skinned it much, or they're just planning on doing that for the first time this year, we do have a DVD called Show Me the Money. I filmed it. Charlie's on there, basically showing you start to finish on all, basically every fur bearer in Indiana, at least, that you can mess with. Then there's some bonus stuff on there, like how to turn the ears and things like that on the cartilage. And you can also watch a free one there on YouTube. We have in our how-to section. I skin one, a coyote in the field, no fancy setup. You just hang it by a foot and got a knife. No fancy machine puller skinners, none of that stuff. So anyone can do it. So that's out there. Then as far as other fur handling tips, we recommend our buddy Stu Miller over at Coon Creek Outdoors. Check out his YouTube channel. He has great fur handling knowledge and plenty of videos to back it up.
Right.
So
I think in our how-to section, there's one on muskrats, one on coyotes. There might be some other ones too. So, but yeah, definitely check out Coon Creek Outdoors. He's that's kind of his. He's obviously has trapping content, but his fur handling is really good. So
yeah, I think that's he'll tell you that's what kind of blew the channel up in the first place. So.
Right.
So good stuff.
Yep.
Anything else, Charlie?
I think that's it. If you got further questions, leave them below on YouTube, and we'll try to get to them on the next podcast.